who can break into a house? A burglar? A thief? And what about wild animals, like snakes and frogs crowding the pool, cheeky bears and raccoons, and even kangaroos and elephants? Let's take a look at it. In this episode, you'll see animals that people found at home. Let's go. A house with a pool is great, and many people would like to buy one. If you have that dream too, keep in mind that one day a snake may end up in your pool, something like in this case. And it would be fine if there was a small snake in the pool, but a 15-foot creeping creature crawled in here. The residents didn't dare to pull it out on their own and called the service that's engaged in catching such intruders. The guys coped perfectly. First, they pulled the snake out of the pipe, into which it accidentally got stuck, and then out of the pool itself. I don't know what's more creepy, seeing a giant snake in your pool, but just one, or coming home to find an army of frogs in your pool. Just look at this croaking invasion. The pool was literally filled with frogs of various sizes. There were large individuals and those that personally seemed to me to be grown-up tadpoles. I wonder how they got here in the first place, and why there were so many of them. The girl who lives in this house was also interested in this question. She was uncomfortable with so many frogs, but her dog liked its new friends. The dog took a little swim with the frogs. Imagine you come home, open the door, and you see a bunch of them in your backyard. I mean, when you live in Africa, a lion can come to you. But a whole pride? This is something new. The lioness was resting and didn't think that anyone would come here at all. But when they saw the owner of the house, they slightly shied away and jumped up. However, they didn't want to leave right away and stayed for a while longer. But this is something more serious. Those lionesses were harmless, but this king of the jungle is very determined. It tries very furiously to get inside the room, beating the door with its paws and trying to turn the doorknob with its teeth. Fortunately, it didn't succeed, and it's good that no one from the other side came out. Imagine what kind of encounter it would be. While lions are breaking into homes in Africa, bears are doing the same thing in the United States. In this footage, we see black bear. It's probably the most common bear in the United States. It entered the territory of the house and approached a man who was just resting. He, of course, didn't expect to see a bear. However, it's unclear who was more afraid of whom. And some bears in the US are so brazen that they come to the same houses all the time. A man from North Carolina who lives in this house regularly encounters bears on his porch. He's visited by a family of 4 bears which beg for food. The man doesn't mind feeding them, and the bears never attack him. They know he won't hurt them. This bear doesn't need any invitations and treats from people. It copes by itself without the participation of people. But in fact, this is an isolated case. A woman living in this house came home one day and found that a bear had entered her kitchen and found a couple of goodies. However, the food wasn't healthy. The bear stole a few lollipops. What wild animal do you think you might accidentally find at home in Australia? Maybe a venomous snake or a dangerous spider? Of course. But don't forget about kangaroos either. These marsupials don't get into homes as often, which makes these cases more interesting. For example, here 2 kangaroos got into a fight on the territory of a private house. There were a couple of kangaroos nearby that were watching the rumble. The kangaroos had a little fight, and the video ended there. How long do you think they still used the lawn of this house as a boxing ring? And this kangaroo has gotten closer. It's right in front of the house. This powerful beast is standing outside the window trying to get in. At first, it just scrapes the window, but towards the end, it starts banging on it. It seems to have a very urgent need to get into this house. But why? This elephant doesn't care at all what people think of it. It boldly broke into the kitchen without even going inside the building. The giant made a real mess while looking for something useful or delicious for itself. Probably it was still looking for food because elephants can smell it from a long distance. Scientists believe they have the best sense of smell among all land animals, and they have almost 3 times more genes associated with the perception of smell than dogs. In any case, the giant's sense of smell didn't help. It never found anything edible, but only smashed the kitchen and angered the owner of the house. But this animal was successful. The raccoon entered the house through the cat door and immediately found itself at the goal. It opened a bag of pet food and had a little snack. When the raccoon saw that it was spotted, it immediately ran away, but it was a deceptive maneuver. The raccoon wanted to outwit the man and soon returned to check the situation. As luck would have it, the man didn't go anywhere, so the predator had to leave completely. But not all raccoons are cheeky. Some are really cute, like this cool raccoon that a guy and a girl encountered in their own home. The raccoon was hiding in their bathroom. The girl was scared of it. She probably thought it might have rabies. The guy, on the other hand, took the situation positively. The raccoon was a little uncomfortable because of such excessive attention, and it didn't realize whether it could run away or not, so it tried to stay on the mirror for 3 minutes. I hope they took it outside afterward, or it ran out on its owner. The author of this video woke up to a loud sound and realized that someone had entered the house through the terrace. He grabbed his phone to catch the culprit on camera, and it turned out to be a cute bear cub. The cub didn't mean to hurt or harm the guy at all. I think it just got lost and got into the house by accident. Or maybe it was just curious. Perhaps it was all about curiosity after all, because the young predator did not leave immediately. It wandered around the house a little, made a little mess in the bedroom, but eventually it ran back into the forest. As you can see, bears are far from being as creepy and dangerous as people say they are. But this cannot be said about leopards, truly formidable predators that will deal severely with anyone. In India, people know it well. Here, leopards periodically enter houses, and driving out a wild animal on your own is a very dangerous idea. In this case, they had to call in specialists because the big cat stayed in the building for a long time. It literally captured the building, ran around it, and posed a threat. It had to be knocked out briefly with safe tranquilizers in order to be caught and taken into the wild. There, this big cat will wake up and run in the right place, between the trees and the jungle. Still remember the snake that people found in the pool of their house? Well, that's not so bad. It's much creepier to come across a creeping creature in the house itself. Just such an unpleasant surprise awaited the residents. A snake got under the mattress in their house. Fortunately, the python turned out to be small, but even such a snake could tightly wrap itself around the neck of a human in their sleep. But this python chose a more secure hiding place. It crawled under the stairs and into the farthest corner. It thought that no one would ever find it there, but it was wrong. Sharp-sighted residents saw the snake, after which it was caught by a snake catcher. Now that's a serious one. Look at the fat python hiding under the ceiling of this house. It took a whole team of experts to catch it, but luckily the problem was fixed. All those snakes I showed you were hard to find, and this one is too. You can't see it, but it's right here. The snake is lurking in the Christmas tree and decided to give the residents of this house a Christmas present in the form of a toxic bite. Yes, this is not a python, but a venomous and very dangerous snake. But people will not be satisfied with this option. Let Santa Claus bring presents, and the creeping creature doesn't belong on this beautiful tree. It's not a garland after all. The owner of this house heard the alarm going off. He immediately rushed to the first floor to face the burglar and protect his property. But he only encountered a deer. This hoofed creature had accidentally broken into the house and frozen in place. This was clearly not part of its plans. What to do now? The deer stood there for a couple of minutes and decided to run away. It clumsily ran across the slippery floor, plopped into the pool, freshened up a bit, got out, and ran away. Maybe that was its plan, to swim in the pool? But then why was it necessary to break in? In general, it was a strange animal encounter. One deer is all right, but look at this. A whole herd of the hoofed creatures literally surrounding one of the houses. I wonder how the people who live in that house felt at that moment. They must have been terrified and praying that such an army would not break in. If so, their prayers worked. The deer gang soon went on their way. Okay, when a deer enters a house or hangs around it, it's unpleasant but not so scary because these creatures are not very dangerous. Their larger relatives, moose, are much more dangerous. This is one of them. Look how big it is. If such a giant got scared and started running around the house, it would probably injure someone or make a mess. But the author of the video was lucky. The moose was calm and left the house undamaged. Which of these moments surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. You have to admit that when a wild animal enters your home, it's very dangerous. Despite this, some people have pet crocodiles and pet bears. You'll learn about this further. Yuki. The first in line is Yuki, the wolf dog, with a very difficult fate. By the way, in case you don't know, a wolf dog is a hybrid between a dog and a wolf. These creatures often have a hard time, and Yuki was no exception. After he was born, he lived with his first owner for 8 months, and then the owner decided to get rid of him. The staff at the sanctuary, called Shy Wolf, which is located in Florida, found out about this and decided to rescue Yuki. He was taken to the sanctuary, where he was thoroughly examined. It turned out that Yuki was a wolf by 87.5% and a dog by 12.5%. So we can say that the sanctuary got a real king of the forest. For the sanctuary staff, Yuki was not just another animal but a true friend and pet. It was probably because of his huge size and unusual appearance. As for size, though large, Yuki was never aggressive. The wolf dog was curious and very fond of the sanctuary staff, who became a real family to him. By the way, they called him Woo Woo. Yuki lived at the shelter for about 12 years. Sadly, in 2020, this wonderful story came to an end. Yuki passed away from the cancer he'd been diagnosed with the year before, and the sanctuary lost one of its most amazing pets. But let's not talk about sad things. The hero of the next story is still alive. After all, this is a real crocodile, and they're known to have a hefty lifespan. About 25 years ago, a resident of Indonesia named Irwan was walking down the street and saw guys who were bullying a small crocodile. Irwan dispersed the bullies and decided to help the baby, which at the time fit in the palm of his hand. Irwan brought the reptile home. He only wanted to help the crocodile and let him go, but he quickly became so attached to the little baby that he decided to keep him. He named the crocodile Kojak. The pet gradually grew, and after 6 years, he became a real predator, weighing about 440 pounds at a length of about 10 feet. Irwan had to bring him a few kilos of fish every day to feed such a big boy. The crocodile was well cared for. The owner washed and brushed him. Kojak liked it a lot. But who didn't like the whole story was the local administration. They said that crocodiles are protected species of fauna, so they took Kojak to a safari park, where he now lives. The parting was sad, but Irwan and his family regularly visit their pet in the park, and Kojak is happy every time they see him. Jessica. You might agree that a domestic crocodile is something very exotic and dangerous. Could there be anything more exotic? Absolutely. For example, how about a house hippo? Perhaps Tony and Shirley Joubert of South Africa are the only people in the world who can say that their pet is a hippo. As is often the case, the story began in the animal's early childhood. About 20 years ago, the baby hippo was thrown into the riverbank right near the Joubert home. It happened after a flood. The hippo was only a few hours old and would have died if not for the help of people. Tony and Shirley took the baby with them. She only weighed 35 pounds at the time. Now, Jessica, as the hippo was named, weighs 10 times more. She has her own pond in which she spends a lot of time, but she also visits the Joubert house to refresh herself, drink several dozen liters of tea, and spend time with her foster parents. Because Jessica was raised in captivity, she's not at all such a dangerous hippo as her wild African relatives, but Tony and Shirley are still careful and do not allow themselves to be rude with her. However, they behave relaxed with the hippo. According to the Joubert family, Jessica is a very affectionate and intelligent pet who never shows signs of aggression. The pet is an adult, so she doesn't sit at home all the time, but spends a lot of time in the wild, meeting her congeners. But every time she returns to the Joubert house because that's where her real home is. Giraffes. We have another African guys on the way. It's hard to believe, but even giraffes can become pets. However, in this case, there are a couple of nuances. Mikey and Tanya Carr Hartley came up with the idea of having pet giraffes. They own Giraffe Manor in Kenya, where tourists often stay. The giraffes are, in fact, part of the manor, so in a way you could call them domestic. The thing about the manor is the special breakfasts. Every day at 9 a.m., the giraffes poke their heads through the windows of the hotel, where tourists are having breakfast peaceably at that time. Tourists feed the giants, and they cheer them up and give them an incredible experience. As a result, everyone's happy. Jag. Many people have cats in their homes. They're some of the most popular pets in the world, so it's no surprise. Cats as pets are also found in Africa. However, there you can find big cats. For example, the jaguar, named Jag, who lives in the family of Layla from South Africa. When the jaguar arrived at the Aquaba Lodge, he was in desperate need of company. The hotel owner, Layla, took him in. But Layla wasn't enough for Jag. He needed an animal friend, and the Jack Russell Terrier named Bullet became such a friend. Surprisingly, the wild predator and the house dog got along very quickly. Moreover, they almost immediately loved each other. Now they constantly spend time together. Together they sleep, eat, and play. Jag never hurts Bullet. The big cat understands that the dog is much smaller and weaker than him, so he doesn't hurt him. And how, in the first place, can you hurt such a friend who's become the meaning of your life? Interestingly, Bullet is the main one in such an unusual alliance. He tries to dominate Jag in everything, including games, though he does it with love. Aggie. Sometimes you have to take work home. A Canadian named Mark Dumas is a professional animal trainer, and one day he, too, had to take his work home. It turned out to be a little polar bear named Aggie. Many years ago, a filmmaker needed a polar bear cub for a film about the nature of Alaska. The newborn bear cub was found in a Swedish zoo, and Mark began working with her. After many permits from officials, Mark took the bear cub home, and so this amazing story begins. Now Aggie has grown up to be a large female polar bear, but she's still the same sweet little bear cub at heart. Like Jessica the hippo, Aggie essentially never lived in the wild, so she never became a full-fledged predator. At the same time, Mark, being a professional, never oversteps his bounds and behaves carefully so as to not accidentally piss off Aggie. But she's not going to attack him. The two get along great, spend a lot of time together, and love to swim in the same pool. Now, Mark can rightfully call himself the only person in the world who can freely spend time with a real polar bear. And Aggie can be considered the only polar bear on the planet who's ever lived with humans. Jimbo. And what about the brown bear? History knows quite a few cases where people have managed to turn these predators into full-fledged pets, right? That's right, but the story of the bear named Jimbo is a truly unique and touching one. About 25 years ago, husband and wife Jim and Susan Kowalczyk found a baby brown bear who had been abandoned in the woods. They couldn't just leave him, so they took him back to their home and raised him on their own. Gradually, Jimbo grew and soon changed from a clumsy cub to a huge 1,500-pound brown bear. Luckily, at heart he was still the same bear cub who was always a stranger to aggression. Jimbo got along particularly well with Jim, who became a real foster father to him. They played together all the time. Sadly, Jimbo is no longer alive. He passed away in 2018 at the age of 24, which was a tragedy for the Kowalczyk family. However, even before his death, they had opened the Orphan Wildlife Center and took about 10 other bears in who became their own pets. So the pain of losing Jimbo was not as unbearable as it could have been. Wild thing. Who meets you when you come home? A lazy cat? Or maybe a cheerful dog? Maybe them, maybe someone else. But you're not likely to have a house bison waiting on your doorstep, are you? But Ronnie and Sharon Bridges are. For many years they raised bison, but as they grew older, this business became too difficult for them, and the couple left for themselves only one calf, whom they raised at home. They named him Wild Thing, but don't think that he's wild or savage by name only. By nature, it's a very well-mannered and good bison. According to his loving owners, he always eats breakfast with them and likes to watch TV when action is on. Wild Thing, on the other hand, knows his worth and has a strong character. He only obeys Ronnie and Sharon because he considers them to be the leaders of such an unusual pack. Bear. Taking a selfie with a bear sounds like a pretty good achievement, doesn't it? Except that only a handful of people around the world got it. Here's one of those lucky ones. 3 female hikers decided to take a walk on a hiking trail in one of Mexico's national reserves when suddenly a black bear appeared out of the thicket and approached one of them. It stood on its hind legs, pressed against the girl, and began sniffing her head. The frightened hikers tried to scare the bear, but it was so carried away with the girl that it paid no attention to them. Then the hiker took out her phone and took some selfies with the bear. Seemed the bear needed that, because after the photo shoot, the predator returned to the forest, and the girls hurried to get away from the place of the encountering with the animal, just in case it wouldn't like the pictures and wanted a reshoot. It's hard to imagine what emotion those hikers felt when they took pictures with the bear. But the next protagonist of the episode, photographer Drew Hammond, clearly felt only fear and shock. He came to Alaska to take some photos of bears. He set up camp and watched the animals in a place where salmon lay eggs. Suddenly, a large predator came to him. The bear seemed to have come to pose for the camera on purpose. It didn't attack Drew and generally behaved rather sluggishly, yawned a little, sat, stared at the river, and then left, losing interest in what was happening. To say that Drew was surprised is an understatement. It's not every day that bears get so close to people, and they're not always so calm around people. Elk. This elk, on the other hand, was far from as calm as that bear. The photographer was taking pictures in the Chattahoochee Valley in the United States when suddenly the horned animal approached him. The photographer wasn't disturbing anyone, so it wasn't even clear why the elk suddenly decided to approach him. And it would be fine if it was just that, but the elk surprised the photographer with his aggressive behavior, starting to butt the man. At first, the photographer tried to look as unarmed and safe as possible, but when it became clear that the elk was not going to give up, the man rose to his feet to appear more formidable and larger. Fortunately, rangers soon arrived in the valley and helped scare the beast away. Deer. Being a wildlife photographer is not easy. You have to track animals for hours to get good shots. Finding animals can be difficult, especially if they're standing right behind you. That's exactly what happened to this photographer in the suburbs of London. Roger, an older photographer, saw a deer standing right behind the guy. Apparently, it was the guy who wanted to photograph it and had probably been standing there for hours, not even realizing how close the goal was. Roger decided to film the scene and then shared the footage with the photographer. As for me, these shots are much cooler and more unusual than just pictures of deer in nature. Impala. Did you know that impalas are natural-born gymnasts and acrobats? Not only can these herbivorous animals run away from predators across Africa, but also perform spectacular stunts. One of them surprised a photographer named Neil who went to a national park in Namibia to take a series of pictures. A young impala impressed the photographer with an unexpected acrobatic stunt. It did a handstand perfectly. According to the photographer, the impala started doing tricks after it had quenched its thirst at the waterhole. Apparently, more photographers should make ambushes near African rivers and lakes to get more of these unbelievable shots. Puffins. Taking beautiful pictures of birds is an even more difficult task than taking pictures of land animals, especially if we're talking about the puffins, which are known for their fearfulness. But this photographer got lucky. He was surprised at how eagerly the puffins made contact. Some birds came right up to the photographer and some even jumped on it as if to check if he was a real human or some kind of scarecrow. Possible, though, that the puffins were just looking for something to feed on. In any case, the man got some really great footage. That's all, guys. Which animal's behavior impressed you the most? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and see you later.